Hi, I've been trying to do this big intro. I've been trying to just read this paragraph, and I can't. I just keep struggling. So, I'm just going to jump into the meat of this video. So you just missed like 5 minutes of me just going on and on about nothing. Holy cow. Let's start from the beginning. My whole childhood was spent drawing cartoons and enjoying all the things. This is a thing about Pine Vinyl, by the way. I should probably say that. I'm going to tell you how I came up with Pine Vinyl. Let's start again. The beginning. My whole childhood was spent drawing cartoons and enjoying all the things that are currently being poorly rebooted. I used to make comic books of show ideas, and I was constantly sketching. When The Simpsons entered the scene, I, like everyone else in 1989, was hooked. I especially related to the first season because Bart was the star before Homer took over in every season after. I was the same age as Bart. I even had a spiked haircut and a bald dad that was lovable but yelled all the time. Now I'm the age of Homer, losing my hair and yelling at my kids. The Simpsons taught me more, though. They taught me something even more important. I read that wrong. Who cares? Let's keep going. The Simpsons taught me how to draw cartoon mouths, which was really the missing link for me. Once I could do that, I started being noticed around the school as the kid who could draw cartoons really well while wearing Wrangler jeans. Pine Vinyl's origins came from 3 major events and 2 A-list Hollywood megastars. In the intro that I was trying to do earlier, I kind of lead or hint at that. So you would have already kind of known that there's megastars before I mentioned even that. But that's kind of a tease. That was in the intro. I couldn't do it. The first event I fulfilled was a dream that I made in my teens. I wrote this, by the way, and I'm really whatever. When I was 17, my dad taught me guitar, and he jammed with me on drums. I immediately started writing songs like the Beatles. I mean, they didn't sound like the Beatles, but it was like when they picked up instruments and made noise, I made noise too. That's the only way I compare it. We recorded hundreds of garage rock songs, all originals. My dream was no longer to be a cartoonist, as it had been previously. Now, I wanted to write songs for a living. I wanted to write a hit song. I stopped drawing and started writing as many songs as I fucking could. I recorded every single one of them, too. After about 10 years, I wrote probably 500 songs. 4 of them are all right. As the years went on, and my dream was fading fast, I realized that I probably wasn't going to write a hit song. I was certainly never going to sell one, so I gave up. But then, my coworker, who was also randomly a rapper, invited me into his recording group. We recorded and sold a handful of songs to producers in Hollywood. But one that I wrote all by myself and I recorded it in my little shitty apartment, was sold for $600 to James Franco, and he used it in a reality show he did that never got produced. But you know what I got out of it? An IMDb page. If you want to achieve your dreams, lower your dreams to make them easier to achieve. Rock. I sold a song. I did it. Good enough. And at that moment, my true passion returned. I wanted to make an animated TV show. The second event was Swanee. He's my best friend, and the Ellis Rugburn dynamic is based off our relationship. Swanee encouraged me to animate and try to be funny with drawings. He enjoyed bad animation, where the comedy is the dialogue or the poor attempts at making things move on the screen. He also decided to ponder his own TV show. He and local bartender we called The Professor made up a show called Barflies. Professor was a book snob and a writing teacher who knew about literature and gritty HBO crime dramas of the 2000s. Swanee was much more like him in likes and taste than me. And they started writing a pilot. Without me. I wasn't invited. But Swanee sensed that I kind of wanted to do it, so he sort of let me. But they didn't ask me for 2 good reasons. I wasn't a good writer, and I wasn't very funny. But I took the cue anyway, and wrote a whole episode all by myself in one weekend. I just researched how to write a script and structure it and finished it, I was so proud. More so because it looked like a real script. Didn't matter what it said. It looked like one. When I flipped through it, it looked like a script, like from Hollywood. But did it read like one? No. It was shit. Writing comedy is very, very hard. I also was a bit of a Judd Apatow homer at the time, and I tried to jam in an ill-conceived love story while molding an immature man story with improv sections noted, and yeah, not great. But I did it. If this script was acted out and filmed, it would seem like a real show. It wouldn't be liked by anyone, but you wouldn't say, "What the fuck is this? It's not even a real show." You'd just say, like, I don't know about this show. It sort of sucks. The story of my script featured 2 characters based off of me and Swanee, and they played off each other as we do in real life. I found it very easy to write this way. So I decided, if I make up a show, it has to be about us. Write about what you know. The third and final event involves an even bigger star and wonderful plot twist. I was 29 years old and done writing songs. I also started dating the woman of my dreams. She looked like Clarabelle, and she loved the Beatles. Much like Rugburn, my 20s were a mess. When it came to dating and relationships, I got dumped a lot. And to paraphrase a line from Carlin, you can tell. Looking back, I can see why, but then I was a romantic songwriter. Who wouldn't want that? Turns out that's a terrible thing to be, and I was terrible, especially when you're broke. But now I had the one, the girl that would save me from myself. I wanted to propose that night, the night we met, but that's probably why I got dumped a lot. Meanwhile, an old coworker contacted me on doing a project for a company he was working with. Just Keep Living is a charitable endeavor created by American President Matthew McConaughey. In his role as Wooderson, he says the line, "Just keep living," and I thought he was the coolest dude to ever live. Dazed and Confused was released when I was a junior in high school, so it was a big deal. His company wanted to create a new Fox animated series to fill in for the soon-to-be ending King of the Hill. The cartoon would be about Matthew's brother Rooster, who is even more of a character as his famous younger brother. My job was to design the characters. I was very rusty when I started drawing again. The first stuff I sent them was not great, and they said so. I tightened things up and eventually got them some alright designs. During one of these back and forths, they decided to give me a call instead of the usual email. So far, it's been strictly email correspondence. The voice on the other end of the phone was faint, like they were on speakerphone. But all I heard were 3 words. All right, all right, all right. Now, not more than a month before, me and Swanee were debating who was the coolest celebrity to be, alive at that moment. Who would you most want to hang out with? He said Vince Vaughn, which is funny to me because he is not fucking cool anymore. And I said Matthew McConaughey. I chose Wooderson. No, honestly, I'm not sure he actually said all right, all right, all right. But it's all I could hear. The Texas beach drawl was thick, and I was left speechless. I like the looks, man. We have a few other characters we want to throw at you. That's me doing that voice. Yeah. What do you got? I said. He explains a few more of the characters, and I am not fucking listening. All I'm thinking is, I wish I was at a bar in front of people so I had witnesses to this monumental moment. How cool would it be? Who are we talking to? Talking to Matthew McConaughey. No big deal. What are you doing? Just being an ass? Sound good to you, man? He said. I replied, yeah, sure does, Mr. McConaughey. Oh, no, man. This is Kush, not Matthew. He then laughed for a while. I fake laughed too, hoping the embarrassment wouldn't cause a seizure. I wasn't talking to the coolest man alive. I was talking to his good buddy Kush. I never did speak to him. I did put him in a cartoon, though, as a thank you of sorts.
I drive a Lincoln. because I like it.
Matthew McConaughey.
Go Longhorns. Hey, you want to hear a joke? What does a beetle eat for lunch?
Macaroni and cheese, man.
Fuck you.
For the job of creating the looks of their characters for their show, I was paid the exact amount it cost to buy my wife's engagement ring. After 4 months of dating, I proposed, and been married 12 years, but you don't give a shit about that. The point of the story was I got a crash course on pitching an animated TV show to a network, and learned a few tricks on character design. Now, I wanted to do it for myself. I sat on a couch in my fiance's condo in one of the most beautiful neighborhoods in Minneapolis and started drawing ideas in a sketchbook. The year was 2010. I was 30. I wanted to make a show about my 20s now that it was over. I wanted it to be about music. I wanted it to be funny. I wanted it to be a duo, much like Beavis and Butthead or JD and Turk from Scrubs. Now I needed names and I needed looks. So I started drawing and filling out every page. Rugburn's name came from the movie Almost Famous. Penny Lane uses the name Emily Rugburn as one of her check-in aliases. Almost Famous is my favorite movie. His look came from a picture I remembered of Liam Gallagher of Oasis on the cover of a magazine I saw at Let It Be Records in the early 2000s. I forget the magazine, but it was a British one, like Mojo or something. Liam had on glasses, and his long, split-in-half hair went under them, shooting out the sides. Oasis is my favorite band. Some days it's the Beatles. It's either Beatles or Oasis. But for this, right now it's Oasis. We'll just say it's Oasis. Now, whereas Rugburn is based off me, Ellis's personality would be Swanee. But his look would be inspired by the baseball legend Doc Ellis, whom was the feature of the greatest YouTube video that has ever been made, ever. This video inspired me to make animation, just as much as The Simpsons did. It was perfect. It is perfect. Ellis was also heavily inspired by the design of Garfield. I love the design of Garfield because to draw him correctly is very, very hard. He, much like Popeye, are works of art and almost fucking impossible to draw. When it comes to design, for all the character designs I've done on the show, Ellis is easily my favorite. I don't know if he's perfect, but he's definitely the closest that I've ever come to designing a perfect cartoon character. The name also came from the Doc Ellis video. I'm high as a Georgia pine. In Minnesota, we are very proud of our pine trees up north. To me, pine trees always made me feel at home. I love the smell. I think they're comforting. They're always green, even when it's snowy. Plus, it sounded good with the word vinyl. The characters would own a record shop, I decided. Of course they would. One of my favorite movies is High Fidelity, after all. Rugburn would also be a lifelong John Cusack fan, as a tribute to this inspiration. Some say I ripped it off. I'm not ripping it off. It's different. The actual very first idea for the show was that these two main characters would run a record store, but the real show were the stories that they would tell about rock and roll's past. At the time, I was reading Keith Richards' biography, Life, which is amazing. You should read it. It's told with such detail. I have no idea how he did it, but it's incredible. And while reading it, I thought, how cool it would be to have a cartoon show all about old rock and roll stories and lore and all that. The Mud Shark and the Black Magic with Zeppelin and Stones getting knife-tacked by reggae stars, Beatles and Dylan getting ripped. That was going to be the show, and then Rugburn and Ellis would kind of be the ones to present it, basically, while living their own lives. This idea quickly evolved into more character stories with just snippets of rock lore. 6 years later, Mike Judge of King of the Hill and Beavis and Butthead fame and Office Space fame and Silicon Valley fame and just overall genius and a hero to me, he randomly came up with the same exact idea. And it's called Tales of the Tour Bus. I guess great minds think alike. Yeah, it's fine. Pine Vinyl's very first life was in the form of a comic book. First, I made a ridiculous 80-page rough draft, which definitely didn't need to be that long. The story is about DJ being hired at the shop, and while Rugburn prepares to overcome his stage fright and perform as the opening act to Taylor's band, the story also features a love story Rugburn being infatuated with his high school crush named Vandalia Dale, who is still dating Taylor, who is clearly Rugburn's nemesis. Plus, Ellis's ex-girlfriend is trying to kill him, and I was very naive when I made it, and I thought it was quite good at the time. I was really proud, and I was walking. There's this road called Linden Hills Boulevard, and the houses on it are amazing. And me and my soon-to-be wife were walking down, and I was half done with this comic, and we looked at one of the biggest houses, and I said, when this show takes off, I'm going to buy you that house. And I bet when I said that, I bet you she thought in her head, what the fuck? What a fucking loser. And she would have been right. But anyway, I made this comic. And I gave it to Swanee, and I said, what do you think? And he told me that it was not good. At least the comedy. I think he liked the art. And he liked the idea that I was doing it. But nothing is cringier than bad comedy. I for sure was not great at writing stories either. And as much as I wanted to be great at both things, I just wasn't there. So I thought maybe I should just quit. Maybe I should just be done. But then I remembered that Pine Vinyl's it. This is it. It's everything. It's all my creative everythings put into one, and there isn't anything else. I could do everything I ever wanted to do in this. I could use all my old songs that I already recorded, and I could just shove them in my cartoons. I could finally tell stories if I could just get better, if I could just get funnier, if I could just learn how to write dialogue. And I did. And at that moment, I decided not to quit, and I became determined to be funny with cartoons. I turned Pine Vinyl into a comic strip. I would sit down and learn how to write jokes, one by one. I've always loved old comic strips. Charles Schulz is a local hero and a personal absolute favorite, and I think about Charlie Brown at least once a day. I imagined Rugburn being a lot like Charlie Brown, actually, if Charlie Brown was the one pulling his own football away. Probably doesn't make sense, but it does to me. Making cartoons was very hard for me. That style of comedy is really tricky. Even good jokes come off a little corny in comic strips, unless you really can surprise the reader. It's definitely an art form, one that I struggled with. I started doing ones that didn't even involve Ellis or Rugburn. Those were easier and funnier. I remember doing one about the Pope. I got it out on the same day that they picked the new Pope. It had a ton of likes, a lot of comments. It was the most successful comedy I've ever done. And it felt good. But then, empty. I knew what I did. I sold out. I abandoned my boys. I started making a few long-form stories with Rugburn and Ellis. That really kind of got me excited again. Not a full comic book, but a full story. And this was fun. The first one was called Burnout Benny and the Time Travel Pill. The gang would go back to change rock history by saving John Lennon, but end up being chased through time by an evil walrus. The art was really cool and full of color and life, and the jokes were a little better than the original comic book, and I don't know. That's what I wanted to do. The second story was about how Ellis and Rugburn are street vigilantes who drive around and prevent assholes from ruining people's days. The jokes in this one were even better, and I could finally imagine what an episode of Pine Vinyl would be like. It would be like this. I made comic strips for about a year and a half, and the whole time Swanee was telling me to start making YouTube animations. Well, I mean, he didn't call them animations, that would be weird, but that's what he meant. Stop making comics and start making cartoons. So, problem was I didn't know how to use any of the animation programs. I only had an old version of iMovie that allowed me about 10 frames a second rather than the normal 24. I couldn't use that to animate, right? I mean, how cheap and shitty would that look? No. I needed to spend the money and time and learn how to really animate like the pros. Just kidding. I totally just use iMovie, and I don't fucking care. The bigger the program, the more complex it all becomes, and the more options, the more time it takes. This can't take long. Pine Vinyl can't take long. If I was going to make my own show, it would have to be able to be completed in a few days each. If I kept it easy, then I could make a cartoon about anything. If it was harder, then it would filter out the things that were deemed not worthy of the time. That would be what would make Pine Vinyl stand out. We look shitty and talk about dumb shit. No, I'm being a stinker, of course, but Pine Vinyl would use bad animation to be more realistic than any show before. Realism. The little things. Pine Vinyl would be small and imaginative and colorful and dumb and fun and stupid and sometimes clever, but dumb. Dumb in a dumb way. The first episode was called Rugburn Writes a Rap Song, and it was fucking terrible. It wasn't animation really, and it wasn't funny. But for me, it was a total success. It looked like a real cartoon. No matter the quality of it, it looked real. Like if you had a cartoon on pause. It got about 35 views and lit a fire inside me that has yet to burn out. It was also the first time I heard the sound of their voices. I've had these characters for a few years at this point, and to finally be able to hear them, to watch them come to life, like they've always been inside my head. It's wonderful. It was 2013. 10 years ago today. All my creative dreams officially came to life with this show on YouTube. And in that episode that I deleted because it was so stupid and weird. Anyway, that's how Pine Vinyl got started.
Yeah, I didn't even ask.